What if what we call public opinion was just a manufactured narrative that makes it easier to convince people that if their views are different, that there's something wrong with that or there's something wrong with them?
Spending is a tax. As soon as the government spends money, eventually it's a tax. Sometimes we put a direct tax on the people, sometimes we borrow the money, and sometimes we print the money.
Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth.
The Patrick Riggins Show. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome again. This is the Patrick Riggins Show. Here each weekend. Coming to you Saturday afternoons at 4 p.m. Once again, you've made it through 7 days of political paybacks, party infighting, and outright government lies and deceit. You've arrived at the refreshing and cool spring of freedom and liberty, the headwaters of those true original American values. Here, the waters of liberty are not polluted with political parties, turf battles, and the dishonest dealings of Washington, well, and government in general. Here you get logic and reason, untainted by the emotional pleas to, quote, get along. Here we stand on the principles of freedom and liberty. And where is here? It's the Patrick Riggins Show, the premier radio show of the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. And originating in Knoxville, Tennessee, this show is also being broadcast locally here in Knoxville on News Talk 97 WOKI. If it's not being broadcast locally in your area, then, well, you need to get on the stick and call your local radio station and request that it be carried by them. Not only do you get to hear the infallible reasoning via your radio rather than however you get it now. It could be on the internet or on YouTube. But your local radio station will experience an unprecedented rush of advertisers tripping all over themselves to get space during this hour. So, you see, it works on all levels. You get to hear it on your local radio show, and they get to make lots of money. And my voice gets to get out even further. So, starting off the show this week, I'm sure most of you have seen all the hoopla surrounding the funeral of Nelson Mandela. It ranges all over the place, from the fake sign language interpreter to, which was just amazing, that was going on. But it ranges from that to the president and a couple of other leaders. Well, they were acting like it's recess or lunchtime during school. It was easy to forget what was really going on there, or what was supposed to be going on. Hey, real quick, speaking of the president, you could look at those pictures that ran all over the news media and just see that Michelle Obama was thinking just like your mom or dad did when you acted up in a public place. You could just see in her head she was thinking, when I get you home, I'm going to bust your butt, boy. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw those pictures. A bunch of kids acting up, not knowing how to act at a funeral, not paying attention to what's going on. Never been taught to behave in those types of situations. Just immature and not disciplined. I do think it goes a long way in accurately showing the world just what a kind of person he and these other leaders really are. But the parallel story I wanted to hit on was back here in America. And this sheriff in South Carolina who was refusing to lower the flag outside the station to half-staff in honor of Nelson Mandela. My email inbox is just flooded pretty much every week. But this week it had tons of messages on both sides of this issue, and all were asking my opinion on this matter. Instead of trying to answer them all, which is what I strive to do, I thought I would take a little bit of time on the show and hit this issue. First off, whether the sheriff was doing it to grandstand or get some publicity, whatever. It doesn't matter. He has the right idea. Now, stick with me on this. Number one, and straight off the bat, Nelson Mandela isn't an American. He didn't live in America, and he wasn't a citizen. No argument there. But second, and more importantly, we shouldn't be lowering flags to half-staff, not officially anyway, in this country for anyone. That's right, no one, citizen or not. Now, if you have a flagpole and you want to fly your flag at half-staff for whatever reason, knock yourself out. But we shouldn't be lowering our flags officially for any reason at all. None. Yes, I can hear you screaming at your radio. What about veterans? What about children killed at a school? What about politicians? Nope. No one. Look, our country is founded on everyone being equal. Even states it explicitly in our Declaration of Independence. All men, meaning all humans, are created equal. The problem is, we have so many people in this country who are more than ready, willing, and eager to put others on a pedestal, put rulers over themselves, and you too, whether you like it or not. I don't know why they're so eager to do this. If you ask them, they'll say it's out of respect, but it's not. If I had to make a guess, it's because they want to be part of the cause célèbre, to be participating in whatever is the event of the day or week. See, I'm part of this big event. I'm one of the in crowd. Here's a question for you to consider. How is this person any better than the mother who is working 2 jobs, trying to care for her children, and she gets run over by a drunk driver? You know, it happens more than you know. Happened here in Knoxville just a little while back. And we're saying Mr. Mandela's life is worth more than hers. How about the dad who goes to work every day to a job he hates, but it puts food on the table for his family? It puts clothes and shoes on his kids' feet. It pays for their college. And in between all that, he volunteers at a homeless shelter, trying to make other people's lives better there as well. And he dies from a heart attack. Are we lowering flags for that American citizen? He's certainly deserving of it. Or how about anybody else that dies in this country? Who decides who is important enough to have flags lowered? Well, for one, I just said you can. You can fly your flag at half-staff all you want. But our government shouldn't be picking and choosing people to be more important and thus worthy of having all flags lowered than other people it deems not as important and thus not deserving of having all the flags lowered. Do you see the point I'm making here? We're too eager to climb on board whatever bandwagon is the one to be on this week, and more importantly, let everyone else know we're doing it. These superficial displays of caring and concern that some people find it so necessary to exhibit. I'm part of that. I lowered my flag. I'm wearing this or that ribbon. I covered that very subject last spring on this show, April 21st. I even went back and checked. You can go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. Scroll down till you get to the April 21st show. It was during the 3rd segment, and the title is Boston Bombing, the Cause Celeb. That's just how much you'll know when you listen to this show. If you heard that show last spring, then you're already way ahead of 90% of the public in thinking about stuff like this. That's why this show is growing so quickly. It's consistent. It's logical. It's not beholden to any political party. We only tell the truth and fight for the true original American values of freedom and liberty. I say it at the end of the show. We're fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. People ask me, Patrick, what does that mean? It's simple. It means this radio show is fighting to return us to those true original American values of freedom and liberty. America is more than a country. It's a concept. It's freedom and liberty. Do you realize how rare that was until our country came along? This concept of people living free, doing what they want, living how they want with no government interference. Unfortunately, we don't live in America anymore. We live in a country referred to as America, but we don't represent the concept of America. The modern-day United States represents a bastardized version of America, a government-controlled and directed version of freedom and liberty that's nowhere near what the original American freedom and liberty represented. Our founders wouldn't recognize this country today. In fact, they would probably be deemed domestic terrorists because they would be fomenting insurrection against our federal government and probably our state and local governments as well. Our economic system, called capitalism, isn't true capitalism. It's crony capitalism. It's government-controlled capitalism. It rewards those with ties to government. And in return, it pays off the people in government running the system for the benefit of those businesses and people. All right, we're already up on the first break of the big show this week, and we're just getting this train started. When we return, we'll continue moving down the track towards more freedom here on the Patrick Riggins Show and the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. Hey, we're back. You're listening to the one place where you'll hear me, Patrick Riggins. That's the Patrick Riggins Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and News Talk 98.7 WOKI. All right. One of the big news stories this week was the budget deal reached in Congress to avoid another government shutdown in January. I have a quick clip of the press conference where Paul Ryan, the Republican from Wisconsin, and Patty Murray, the Democrat from Washington State, they presented their budget, which has now passed the House and is awaiting a Senate approval. Here is the clip that we got from the press conference there.
I'll have a generous portion, for which I will gladly pay you Tuesday.
There you go. He'll have a generous portion of your money, for which he'll gladly pay you on Tuesday. In this case, Tuesday morning on down the road when he's safely out of office and your children are paying off the country's huge debt load. In all practicality, these people are robbing them, your children, and your grandchildren, and probably many generations after that. And they're robbing them of any chance at saving any money for themselves or their families. Heck, the government's already killed the interest rate in this country so that it can finance itself with cheap money. Never mind, it's ruined everybody's savings account with that whole 0.5%, or is it up to 1% now? 1% interest rate that you get on your money. No, let's keep this party going for another year and let the next generation pick up the check. That sounds fair, doesn't it? Did you hear Boehner get into the hissy fit about the conservatives daring to criticize the budget deal? I'm sure you did. It's been all over the media. You know why he got so angry? It's because he wants robots to blindly support whatever the Republican leadership wants. The Republicans, they want this minority base that will blindly vote for them, just like the Democrats have. This is why the Republicans are all racing to out-Democrat the Democrats. This is why I say the Tea Party Republicans, the Libertarian Republicans, the true base of the Republican Party, you've lost your party to the liberals, to the establishment. We've got a clip of Boehner. If you haven't heard it, here it is right here.
You mean the groups that came out and opposed it before they ever saw it?
Yes, those groups. Are you worried that
They're using our members and they're using the American people for their own goals. This is ridiculous. Listen, if you're for more deficit reduction, you're for this agreement.
This is ridiculous. If you're for more deficit reduction, you're for this agreement. Dang it, stop criticizing me. If he honestly thinks this agreement's going to reduce the deficit, then he's either lying or he's crazy. Paul Ryan is the Republican author of this agreement, is no friend of Americans either, despite the fact the conservatives were tripping over themselves during the last presidential election to endorse him and Romney. I mentioned it before a month or so ago. Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Ann Coulter, Laura Ingraham, all these conservative leaders, all these conservative voices, all of them telling us how great Paul Ryan was. But not here, not on this radio show. I was just about the lone voice warning you about him. In case you've forgotten, some of the staff went back and put together just a couple of clips from this show last year to remind you of the consistency and logic that you're going to only find here on the Patrick Riggin Show. Now, this first clip is a little long, but it starts off with a clip from a campaign speech by Paul Ryan, and then you'll hear my comments after it.
That American idea, that opportunity society with the safety net that's there to help people who can't help themselves, that's there to help people get back on their feet who are struggling.
That American idea, that opportunity society with the safety net that's there to help people who can't help themselves, that's there to help people get back on their feet who are struggling. That same statement could have come out of the president's mouth or any other liberal Democrat who might be giving a speech. I've said this over and over. There is not a hill of beans between the two major parties or their candidates. The American idea is not an opportunity society with a safety net. That is why we are having the problems we have today. These guys just do not understand anything but their big government mindset. I don't think it is possible for them to even imagine any other solution other than one involving the government. The government is not responsible for providing anyone with a safety net. Keeping it simple, the reason is the government would have to take money from one person and give it to another to provide that net. Something that is blatantly un-American, or used to be anyway. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this if you haven't been told before. Me, nor anyone else, is responsible for providing for you. You are the only person responsible for that. I'm sorry if you're sick, disabled, or born with some kind of disadvantage. The plain and simple truth is, I'm not responsible for your predicament. So I shouldn't be held responsible for paying for it. That is the cold, hard truth of life. But having said that, I think there is a moral obligation for us to take care of one another as much as we can. But there is not a constitutional requirement for it. You absolutely have to know the difference. Otherwise, you start trying to legislate all sorts of things based on your moral compass, which may not be the same as others, and frequently isn't. Morals are not rights.
There you go. That's why this show is so popular. The principles you hear on this show today are the same ones I was arguing for when the show started. That's not something you'll hear on 99.9% of the radio and television shows on today. And that's why this show is growing so quickly. Here's one more quote, much shorter than that one that I played on this show last year.
Every problem doesn't disappear to the workings of the free market alone. I would love to say if we just went on the gold standard, it would all be settled.
There you go. This is the true thinking of a government knows best politician. And the Republicans wonder why Romney and Ryan couldn't win. Why the conservative base did not turn out and vote for either the Democrats in name or the Democrats who call themselves Republicans.
Every problem can't be solved through the free market alone. That from the Republican, mind you, who co-authored this budget deal. This is what I mean about no difference between the Republicans and Democrats. You know what the Republicans lust after so much that the Democrats have? I mentioned it just a minute ago, and that's what all this builds on. It's these minority voting blocks that will vote straight down the party line no matter what. The black vote in this country breaks 98% to the Democrats. And that just kills the Republicans. The Hispanic vote starting to go that way. It breaks predominantly to the Democrats. That's the one minority the Republicans are hoping to turn into a blind voting bloc for themselves. I just played that clip of John Boehner getting angry that the conservatives weren't falling into line and voting like they're told. It irks the Republican establishment that here are these Tea Party people daring to think for themselves and represent their voters. You see, the Republican leaders don't do that. They don't care what the voters think. They're pretty safe in their congressional seats, so they don't think they have to listen to what Americans want. There was a story that ran this week quoting some Boehner allies, but not mentioning them by name. What they said was, quote, when Boehner tries to placate the staunchest conservatives in his caucus, these allies say, the results are a government shutdown, a major loss on the fiscal cliff deal a year ago, and other Republican embarrassments. Well, one person the story did name was Steve LaTourette. He's a Boehner friend and former GOP House member from Ohio. He said he's heartened by the stepped-up actions by Boehner, the chamber, and others frustrated by Tea Party tactics. He warned, however, that mainstream Republicans won't tame the Tea Party faction without huge amounts of effort and money. These leaders and other establishment Republicans are actually embarrassed by the Tea Party representatives demanding the government be held to a standard, demanding that government stop all this spending. That's why I tell you, we need to vote them all out, every last one of them. Turn Congress over every election. Kick everyone out each time, and maybe we'll start making some progress. Our founders never intended for this to be a lifelong career, yet we have people who have done practically nothing but sit in Congress. We're up on the bottom of the hour break here on the Patrick Riggins Show. When we come back, we'll have a lot more to work through. We'll hit a couple more things that I have in the stack here before we run out of time this week. This is one of the disadvantages to having just an hour show on Saturday. So when we come back, though, we'll hit on that stuff and a lot more, and we'll try to work through it all before we run out of time. Here on the Patrick Riggins Show and the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. There's no way you should let this show go. We're not giving up on you, the Americans out there. This is the Patrick Riggins Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and locally being broadcast on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. You know, when we left off this last segment, I was kind of railing on the kick them all out, that sort of thing. If you keep listening to this show, we'll let you know who's being a hypocrite and who isn't. I'll go ahead and warn you right now, though, the list of hypocrites is very long, while the list of non-hypocrites is practically non-existent. You see, these politicians can talk all they want, but they can't hide their true colors. Their true selves always come to the surface, and this show is there to catch them. Here's a quick example from a story I have this week. It originates right here in Tennessee. It's about the FCC, and they're looking into allowing cell phone use on commercial airline flights. Now, the FCC is only giving permission. It will be up to the airlines to decide if they want to allow it on their company's planes. So, to give you a little background, a Democrat administration is loosening up the restrictions and allowing private business to decide if they want to allow cell phone usage. Remember that. A Democrat administration. Usually not one to let private companies make their own decisions on anything. But here's the news story. Stateline, Washington, December 12th. U.S. Senator Lamar Alexander, he's a Republican from Tennessee, introduced legislation to prohibit cell phone conversations on commercial airline flights, a possibility the Federal Communications Commission is scheduled to consider. Quote, keeping phone conversations private on commercial flights may not be enshrined in the Constitution, but it is certainly enshrined in common sense, Alexander said. This legislation is about avoiding something nobody wants. Nearly 2 million passengers a day, hurtling through space, trapped in 17-inch wide seats, yapping their innermost thoughts. So, it's not enshrined in the Constitution, but that isn't going to stop Senator Alexander. No, sir. And remember, he's a Republican. He's even running for re-election, touting how he's all of a sudden this huge conservative who doesn't want Washington meddling in our affairs. I have a clip of his campaign commercial right here. One of the staffers grabbed it just in case we wanted it, and I think we'll play it. Here's just a clip of his campaign commercial.
If Washington would just adopt some Tennessee common sense, it won't take that long to reduce their meddling and get our country back on track.
So I guess introducing legislation to ban cell phone usage on commercial airline flights, and instead of allowing the companies themselves make that decision, Senator Alexander doesn't consider that meddling. And, he's even got Dianne Feinstein as a co-sponsor on it. They've got a quote from her. Flying on a commercial airline in a confined space, often for many hours, is a unique travel experience that is, candidly, not conducive to numerous passengers talking on cell phones. This bill recognizes the use of cell phones to make calls during flights can be disruptive and irritating to other passengers and will prevent such communications during domestic flights. Also, this legislation, it's called the Commercial Flight Courtesy Act, would prohibit the use of voice communication through cell phones on regularly scheduled commercial flights. And this was come up after the FCC announced it is exploring what type of cell phone use is safe on airplanes. Senator Alexander's legislation mirrors current regulation, and it only applies to commercial airlines, not private charter flights or foreign carriers, unless they're flying between U.S. airports. Oh, and it also exempts federal air marshals and flight crews for official business. Oh, of course, we have to exempt the federal boys. They're working for the government, so they don't have to follow our laws. But Alexander continued, when you stop and think about what we hear now in airport lobbies, babbling about last night's love life, next week's schedule, arguments with spouses, it's not hard to see why the FCC shouldn't allow cell phone conversations on airplanes. So even though the FCC in a Democrat administration wants to let airlines make up their own minds, instead of allowing the market to decide this, Lamar Alexander wants to meddle in the business and tell them what to do. In case you forgot, here's that clip of his campaign ad. He's running this right now.
If Washington would just adopt some Tennessee common sense, it won't take that long to reduce their meddling and get our country back on track.
So his campaign commercial claims he's all for reducing the meddling of Washington, yet here he is introducing legislation that what? Meddles. This is like the government demanding KFC serve hamburgers because people might want that instead of chicken. Senator Lamar Alexander isn't content to let the market dictate what KFC serves. Oh, no. Some people might want a hamburger, but their family wants chicken, so they're stuck eating a dead bird instead of a dead cow. Well, we can't have that. We have to make sure people have the choice of beef instead of chicken. Better make a law requiring beef. That's the same logic. Instead of allowing the airlines to establish their own rules, maybe even charging different rates depending on whether you're sitting in a part of the plane that allows cell phone use or a part that doesn't, instead of allowing the private companies to decide what they want to allow on their planes, no, Lamar Alexander wants to stick the government's nose into their business and tell them what to do. Because he knows best, you see. He knows how you should act. He doesn't think you should have cell phones on planes, so he's going to get a law passed keeping the ban in place no matter what the company may decide to do. Like I said, it's like requiring a chicken-only restaurant to serve beef because he thinks you should. That's it. He wants you to act in a certain way because he knows better. This from a candidate desperately trying to convince voters he's not a Washington insider or a federal government knows best guy. These guys' true colors will always come through. Senator Alexander, he's a big government solutions guy. Just like the rest of those people in government, convinced of their own superiority over us poor citizens out here in flyover land. I wanted to talk about this real quick before we get to the last break. I'm sure you've heard the news. We've had another shooting, and I've talked about sensationalizing this type of thing over and over, but my words fall on deaf ears. And because of my beliefs of not encouraging these kinds of things, all I'm going to say is it occurred in suburban Denver, and if it affected someone you know, then I'm sure you've received a phone call by now. If it didn't, then your life is the same as it was 5 minutes ago. All you can do by talking about this over and over is give people ideas. If you want some information about that, Google suicide contagion. That'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Same thing happens with big events like a shooting. How is this supposed to make your life any better anyway? How's this helping? Snow in Denver delaying airline flights. Okay, that might affect people here. A shooting at a school, how does that affect me? Why is this news any more than reporting all the shootings and murders that occur every night all around the country? Oh, that's right, we can't sensationalize those, so who cares? Even though it's human beings being killed then too. Even though more people being killed than are killed in this school shooting. Doesn't matter. We can sell advertisers time slots on our network if we show them how much audience we can draw doing news stories like this. They're talking about a kid shot in some back alley in Los Angeles. Psst, who cares? No big story there. Oh, sure, it's another person dead, but that don't mean as much to us. We can't pull ratings talking about them. Hey, we get a school shooting, no. We have to be sure and capitalize on those. Those don't happen just every day, you know. Better run that horse while it's still fresh, still has some legs, and can score us a couple more ratings points. It gets pretty sickening when you think about it enough. We're up on the last break here on the Patrick Riggin Show. When we come back, we'll talk about our old friend, the drone attacks. We've had some more, or one more anyway, that we know of, and we'll talk about that when we come back here on the Patrick Riggin Show on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network. Welcome back to the Patrick Riggin Show here on the Libertarian Lighthouse Radio Network and News Talk 98.7 WOKI. Jumping on into this segment since it's usually kind of short. Did you read about the United States carrying out another terror attack? Drone strike this week? We posted it on our Facebook page, which incidentally is at facebook.com/Patrick Riggin Show. A U.S. drone mistakenly targeted a wedding convoy in Yemen's Al-Batha province after intelligence reports identified the vehicles as carrying al-Qaeda militants, two Yemeni national security officials told CNN on Thursday. The officials said that 14 people were killed and 22 others injured, 9 in critical condition. The vehicles were traveling near the town of Rada when they were attacked. I'm going to screw up all these names out of the Middle East, just so you know right now. That includes these surnames, too. This was a tragic mistake and comes at a very critical time. None of the killed was a wanted suspect by the Yemeni government, said a top Yemeni national security official who asked not to be named because he was not authorized to talk to the media. U.S. officials, of course, declined to comment on the report. The convoy consisted of 11 vehicles, and the official said 4 of the vehicles were targeted in the strikes. 2 of the vehicles were completely damaged. Among the killed were 2 prominent tribal leaders within the province. Residents in Rada were outraged about the attack and called on the Yemeni government to put an end to drone strikes in their region. Quote, more than 50 innocent civilians in our town have been killed by drones, said Abdullah Al-Kabra, an eyewitness to the drone strike. All those who were killed were supportive of the government's anti-terror campaign. That will surely not be the case of their tribes and families if the government does not strongly intervene. Relatives of Yemeni citizens killed in a drone strike have demanded an apology and compensation and warned of tribal unrest, an official said. The first demand is an end to strikes, the official said on Saturday. They also want financial and moral compensation. Of course, and not that they don't probably deserve that. This announcement came following Friday's protests that blocked the road between Rada and Sana'a, the capital city, during the funeral of 13 civilians killed in the attack. Yemeni security officials have argued that drones have on numerous occasions directly played into al-Qaeda's favor, turning peaceful tribal communities into vengeful killers. The attack proved the need for tighter control and regulations as far as drones are concerned. At times, they have proved deadly and destructive to civilians. This was from Abdul Salam Muhammad. He's president of the Sinai-based Abad Studies and Research Center. You know, did you ever find yourself wondering if this is why the so-called terrorists hate us? You know, I used to think that way, but that was until I found out about the new terrorism information hotline that the United States now has. I used to read stories like this and think, hey, maybe we're making people mad because we're running all over their countries and killing people through these types of drone attacks. We're violating human rights. But I think I had that all wrong. Because now you can call directly to Washington and get set straight. Hold on here. I've made a recording where I called that very number.
Thank you for calling the United States Terrorism Hotline. The reason terrorists hate the United States is because
of our Western culture.
There you go. Western culture is why they hate us. It isn't about drone attacks. It's not about overthrowing governments elected by the people with whom we don't agree. But you know, that's kind of vague. So I went and hit the redial and I tried to get a better reason.
Thank you for calling the United States Terrorism Hotline. The reason terrorists hate the United States is because
of Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus.
There you go. Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus. They're the problem. See, I knew it was something simple. So whenever you read stories like this and think, gee, what's making these people so mad? You can do just like me. Get your mind all cleared up and have the right answer at your fingertips for when your friends ask you this very same question. Plus, if they don't believe you, you can say, hey, I got that answer straight from the United States government, the most trusted entity on the planet. All right, we are coming up on the coming up on the end of the show here on the Patrick Riggins Show. Hey, if you want more information about us, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. That's facebook.com and then the /Patrick Riggins Show. Riggins is Riggins show, and that's all together. You don't have to be a member of Facebook. You can just type that address in and go to that page and read anything on it. You can also go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. That's where all the archive shows are, along with this show will be posted later tonight. And if you want to email us, our address is basically the same thing, patrickriggins@gmail.com. Or if you'd rather, you can drop us a card or letter to the WOKI studios here on Old Kingston Pike in Knoxville, Tennessee. Hey, remember, liberty begins with you in your mind. Join me next Saturday afternoon at 4. We'll be fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on the Patrick Riggins Show.